Hello everybody, welcome back to the Crizzy White channel. What is there to say about melmige that nobody else could? First of all, he's enemy number one. Compared to every other hip-hop artist in our scene, which is not many, we have a lot of people focusing on the more melodic trap stuff and not really the rap stuff. He is my only competition on YouTube. So, you know, his streams are better than mine. His videos are better than mine. And he looks better than me. But I think I have the most reason to be able to critique his music than anybody. Because guess what? What he makes and what he does is the stuff that I used to make and do all the time. So I have an understanding of it. That being said, he does it better than me. But let's get into the review, everybody. This is definitely an album for the Midwest white boys, especially the ones who like sitting around campfires. Me. I am a Ohio boy, born and raised. I love sitting around a campfire with a little hot dog on the stick. You know what I'm saying? This album creates a very different vibe from what more of the scene represents. You know, we have the hyper pop lane, we have the pop music, we have the trap, we have the distorted 808s with the heavy rapping and flows. We have all of that, but we don't have a lot of the jazz, hip hop, old school boom bap stuff. We don't see a lot of that in our scene, and it's nice that somebody is filling in that space. I mean, we have Swain, we have some Sin, but other than that, melmige really is the face of the hip hop scene of the underground. And it's nice to see that. Most of the things that I review, most of the albums, most of the projects, most of the artists are incredibly melodic, and they rarely tap into the old school hip hop vibe. So it's nice to cover something different. I mean, it'd be nice to cover more, like if Swain drops a new record, I'd love to cover that. But, you know, even though it's distinct, it's unique, and it's set apart, it doesn't mean that I don't have problems with it, because I do. Melmige often, whenever I critique his music to him, like, whenever I hear it to, and I'm just talking to him outside of this, and I say that he has a dry mix, or I say that I'm not a fan of the engineering, he usually reflects that and says, well, it's more about the lyrics and vibes, I don't really care about the engineering, which is, I get that. But it is really hard to enjoy certain songs when they are grating to hear, when they are bad with headphones. Like, there are some songs on this project, very few and far between, I will be honest, that it is hard to listen to some of the verses on it because the mixing is not clean. And I get that he's going for the more DIY, lo-fi vibe, like the mixing isn't supposed to be overly clean, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be crisp. I will give the credit that this project's vocal mixing and overall engineering is an improvement. On melmige's part. Let's get into my biggest problem with this album. There are way too many features, dude. There are only 3 songs that do not contain feature verses on the entire record, and one of them, I Currently Have a Cold, wasn't even supposed to be on the album. Melmige just threw it on because he thought it fit post making it. If that song did not exist, there would only be 2 songs in the entire project without feature verses. And while I do like seeing collaborations, I feel as if these feature verses are not necessary. They don't feel like they're actually adding anything to the song. It just feels like he got somebody on the song for the name recognition, or just because he wanted to hear somebody on the beat. But just because you want to hear somebody on the beat doesn't mean that they do well on it. For instance, I'm gonna get into the individual tracks later, but Swain's verse is rough. I really don't like that the opener has a feature. When it comes to albums and stuff, I prefer an opener that is just you, putting everything on the table. And not only is it not just melmige, but Swain's verse is roughly mixed, the flows are all over the place, and he doesn't fit the topic or the theme of the song whatsoever. It feels so out of place. I understand wanting a Swain verse, especially on that instrumental, but he was not seeing the vision that you provided. He was not matching that, and I feel like it just took up time, took up space. A huge issue with this project is that the project takes up so much time. It is such a long project, but so much of it is taken up by feature verses that don't add anything to the songs, and because of that, it overstays its welcome. I get often bored with this project. Um, I genuinely feel like some of the features just didn't try as hard as Mel did, and when it comes to the vocal performances, melmige is coming out swinging on this entire project. I love melmige's performances. I love his flows. I love his energy. I love the emotion in his voice. Melmige is coming swinging. This is some of his best rapping. But pairing him with these other artists who most of them don't even make the more rap hip hop focused stuff, you see the flaws in bringing in people to your world that do not fit your world. The track list is incredibly bloated, and it just makes me want more from melmige. I want to hear what melmige has to say. It's melmige's album. Other than the 2 Sin features and the Only Friend feature, there are really no necessary verses. I love those 2. I think that those 2 fit incredibly well in the project. But even the second Sin track, he was kind of just thrown on the end, which is fine. I love the verse. But it was kind of like melmige finished the track and went, how can I make this track longer? I'll call up Sin. Overall, the flows and the lyrics of the project are incredibly buttery smooth. I love the focus on creating visions of nature and comparing your isolation, maturity, and apathy to the natural world, making it a part of growing up and learning. I respect the decision of not having many refrains or hooks throughout the project, but it does make it hard to pick out individual songs to have a lasting impression. There's really only 1 or 2 lyrics from each song that really stick, because there's so few songs with refrains or hooks. The production is very consistent, and it picks up near the last few tracks, but for most of the track list, I'm left really bored by these repetitive melodies, and the drums are incredibly basic, especially in the beginning of the track list. That being said, whenever Hirosha is producing or doing really anything for the album, it does pick up a lot. I really like when Hirosha puts his hat into the ring for melmige, even outside of this project. But that being said, I don't find myself being too attached to this project in a way that I wish I could be. It felt like the guy that I want to listen to, melmige, is taking a back seat for these guest appearances way too often, and the solo songs that we do have almost feel out of place. That being said, I think this album is alright. If I had to give a score, it's a solid 5 out of 10. And I know that sounds kind of harsh, but if I want to be honest with you, I didn't enjoy my time with this album as much as I thought it would. I really didn't. I was looking forward to listening to this a lot, but when I actually sat and listened to it, and yes, I listened to it 2 or 3 times now, I just found myself getting really bored until about the 4th track. I feel like there is not much here. I feel like the concept is nice. I like the vibes. I like the idea of the project, but the few flaws it has, especially with the engineering, with the overabundance of features that do not need to be here, I find myself getting really bored. And it's not even on melmige. Melmige is doing well, but it's a 5 out of 10 to me. It really is, and that's not terrible. It's just middle of the road, you know? I wouldn't mind if somebody threw this on, but I'm not really fiending to hear most of these songs. That being said, I do have a few favorite tracks. Come Home Nomad, Thunderstorm Soliloquy, I Currently Have a Cold, Anxiety Freestyle 2. Those are all bangers. That's 4 tracks I genuinely love, and while I think Thunderstorm Soliloquy has some problems, I do really like it. But Anxiety Freestyle 2, dude, that song is amazing, and Come Home Nomad genuinely has some of the best melodies melmige has ever done. I really like the vibe of those tracks. I do have some tracks on here that I think do take away from the project. Tracks that I do think hold this back a lot. The first one being the intro, Orange Autumn Blues, the second one, featuring Swain. I talked a little bit about it in the intro, and I'll get more into it with the individual tracks, but as an intro, this was disappointing. It really was, because the instrumental is solid, but I feel like the energy on this track wasn't there. And then the other track that I think is really out of place is Snowed In 2001. I don't know what it is about the track, but it's just boring. It is really, really boring. But anyways, if you only wanted to see me give the score and my overall review, And trust me, I understand if you just want to listen to the songs and make your own decisions up. Go ahead and do that, because a lot of people will attach themselves to this project deeper than I did. Because while I'm not crazy about this project, you might be. But that being said, this is your final spoiler warning. I'm about to get into the individual tracks, talk about what they cover, and talk about what they mean to me and how I feel about them. So first up, we have the opener, Orange Autumn Blues 2. Overall, I find the song to be a quite boring intro. Mel's flows are pretty smooth, but they're often interrupted by like these little skits and talking moments where he's like, fuck, or damn, I should have hit that flow better, or huh, isn't that weird? It just feels like he's cueing in, and like, it feels like Spider-Man making quips throughout the track, and I don't like that. I really don't. And I feel like it could work if the rest of the album did that, but it doesn't. It's so out of place. It's just weird. I really don't like the vibe. For an intro to an album, it does not set the tone of the project. The instrumental does, yes, but the quips don't. They're there for no reason, and it sets a bad tone, a bad taste in my mouth. Swain's guest verse is okay in terms of the flow, but he does not fit the track, and the mixing is so dry. It's almost hard to listen to, the mixing that Swain has. I really don't like it. It grates my ears. And I like Swain. Swain is a good artist, but this feature is very half-baked. I think that Mel's mixing is honestly fine on this track, but when it comes to Swain, he is literally there for no reason, in my opinion. Next up, we have Old Habits Die Hard featuring Adjacent. This definitely should have been the opener to the project. I flirted with the idea of putting it into my favorite tracks, but there are parts of it I'm not crazy about. Mel, of course, flowing incredibly smooth. And the layering is a nice touch from melmige. I don't usually hear layering from Mel. Usually he's a one-take Jake. That's all he does. He does one take, and then he mixes that on his little preset, and he's done. But no, he has layering. He has background vocals. That is so nice. And I feel like it needed to be there, because the guest verse from Adjacent is nice, and it has a lot of layering, so it's nice to hear melmige stick with that. That being said, Adjacent's lyrics are fucking goofy as hell. Is it a crime to use my voice? Somebody lock him up! He's using his voice! Somebody lock him up! That's how I felt listening to that track. Okay? Those lyrics are fucking goofy, and it does not fit the track. And he takes up way too much time. Like, half the track is Adjacent. And I don't like his verse, genuinely. I like Adjacent's music. I've heard him on other stuff, and he's good. Same with Swain. But I don't like him on this track. But other than that, for Mel's performance, incredibly solid. I really wish this was the opener track. Then we get into Snowed In 2001, the other track I have in my least favorites. But me being negative about this song means we only go up from here. So if you're ready for me to stop trash talking melmige, after this we're done. Well, we're not done, but it slows down. This beat is very boring. Incredibly boring. This beat has nothing relevant to it. I do not pick up a single melody in my head coming from this beat, and the drums are so basic. They're so basic. I really hate this instrumental. I genuinely do. This beat ruins the track off the bat. And then melmige has no emotion in his damn voice, dude. It's a very dead experience for like most of the track. And of course the lyrics are all right. They always are. But even his flow falters a little bit with this. And the dry mixed with the monotone performance, this track just isn't memorable. I can't pick out a single line from it. And while Hirosha fits Mel's style better than other artists so far, I still feel like it doesn't provide anything to the track. So far, what I felt writing, because I was writing down as I listened to the track, and what I wrote was, what I want from the album is more melmige. Because I'm not getting a lot of melmige. And on this track, melmige's heart doesn't even sound like he's into it. This sounds like something I would scrap from the project. If this was taken out, and then I Currently Have a Cold was just put in, and they didn't like add both to the project, I think that would have been fine. I think that would have been perfect, because Snowed In 2001 might work as a little single, but it doesn't work on this album. Then we go into one of the best songs from the project, Come Home Nomad. By far the best singing I've ever heard from melmige. I am not a melodic melmige fan. I will say that right now. I do not like when melmige sings. I feel like he doesn't really understand how to be in key most of the time. But throw all of that out the window for this performance. Come Home Nomad is great, dude. His voice is so beautiful, and it makes me want him to try this more. I love the more wet mix, the reverb mixed with the jazzy instrumental. It's beautiful. It's incredible. The wetter vocals of the track are so nice. I wish that melmige's vocals weren't so dry all the time, because hearing him with a little bit of wet max really creates an impact with his vocals. I really like it. The song overall sounds so clean. By far the best engineered track of the album. Sin's presence on this track feels necessary, dude. His voice fits the instrumental so well. He's matching the topic, and the writing structure is similar to Mel, but unique enough that it doesn't overtake the song. I really like this. Those two have incredible chemistry. Come Home Nomad takes a lot of things from the tracks I don't like and then makes them work. I like that. Next up, we'll have, okay, I'll admit it's getting a bit scary. It is nice to hear a solo performance, but the mixing on this track ruins it. The push vocals, when melmige puts a little more energy into his voice and it starts almost being shouting, it's nice. Like, I like the vocals, but it sounds so rough. It hurts my ears to listen to, even on lower volume. It's so... There's way too much high end. It's way too dry. Just a little bit of reverb, just a little bit. Maybe could have softened it, but even then, you need a de-esser. It's just so strong and so grating with the vocals that I like that you tried something different, and I like the performance, but it is ruined by the engineering. Next up, we have Thunderstorm, Soliloquy. This is an incredible song. The best instrumental on the entire album by far, and I love the emotion in both melmige's and Only Friends vocals. That being said, what makes the track a little for me is that Only Friends vocals are way too dry, especially when a performance is that layered. There's so many layers on Only Friends vocals. You need a little reverb in the background. You need a little less dry mix. The actual singing itself is really catchy, and I can't ignore the fact that it's catchy. I do think that the harmonies that Only Friends provides makes the track feel more full, and this was a genius inclusion on the part of picking a feature. I currently have a cold. Despite not being created for the album, it fits the track list incredibly well. The lyrics don't fit as much as the rest of the album does. There's not as much talk about nature or just the natural world. There's less of comparing melmige's feelings to the world around him. There's less talk of personal growth. The lyrics themselves don't really fit the project, but sound-wise, perfect fit. I love the place that I currently have a cold fits into the track list. It is one of my favorite songs from the album. Even if it wasn't on the album, I do genuinely love this song. And it's a great break from the rest of the project. It grows on me with every listen. The first time I heard the song, I didn't really like it, but with every listen, I currently have a cold becomes one of my more favorite tracks. The second track was Sin. I don't have it written in my notes because I didn't really, it's an okay song, like it's good, but I felt like I didn't really need to write about it because it's just there, you know. It doesn't add much to the track list, although it is a good song. So I didn't want to shit on it, but I didn't want to praise it either, so I'm just going to skip over it, and that's what you get. It was alright. And next we get to the outro. Perfect closer, dude. Anxiety Freestyle 2 is such a nice closer to this project. It ties the melancholic knot all together. It pinpoints the idea that growing up causes you apathy, reflecting on your nostalgia, constantly comparing your now to back then. I love the instrumental, I love the performance, and overall, it has the best engineering of the entire album. I think that if the future of melmige's career builds off of what Anxiety Freestyle 2 brings to the table, I think that it'd be really nice. I am definitely looking forward to hearing more like this from melmige. I love how jazzy the instrumental is. I love how pinpointed his lyrics are. He just creates a solid environment, and I love that. Overall, like I said, 5 out of 10 album. It's worth listening to if you like jazzy hip-hop. I'm not crazy about jazzy hip-hop, I'll admit that. This album really isn't fully for me, and that's fine. That's fine. I think that you could find a lot of good within this project, even in the parts that I'm missing. But I do think The Pianist is a better album. I will say that. Even though it's only 3 tracks, every moment of The Pianist fills its time well. Every moment feels necessary, and this album has so much dead air. If I Sit Down is a great concept, a great idea, but it falters in its execution. And with The Pianist just being more solid, more straight to the point, I can't help but find myself compare it to If I Sit Down, because every flaw that If I Sit Down has, The Pianist does not. While The Pianist has less energetic vocal performances from melmige, everything ties together in a way that I feel like If I Sit Down doesn't. I kind of felt myself wondering in my head what melmige was really getting at with this entire album until I heard Anxiety Freestyle 2, which is both negative for the album, but a positive for the closer. But let me know what you think. Am I being too harsh on the guy? Probably. I probably am. But to me, the album is a 5 out of 10. And maybe it'll get better with more listens. But for now, that's all I've got. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.